Here with me further to discuss the legal aspects of gun ownership and the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her outlook on the issue is gun rights lobbyist and founder of the National Association of Gun Rights, Dudley Brown. So Dudley, I want to ask you about the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg before we get started because, of course, this is something that overlaps with something that your organization does. And in fact, with the prospect of a 6-3 conservative majority, there are opportunities now to solidify the Second Amendment for many gun owners. So do you think that this is that type of opportunity?
Well, Alex, I don't think we're really talking about a 6-3 majority. Justice Roberts has been a disappointment. He is, even though he's the Chief Justice and was appointed by a Republican, he has not been willing to grant cert to a lot of Second Amendment cases. We had a case based on a free speech case from Montana that we were trying to get heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, and we're pretty certain he's the one stopping it all. Of course, we see this as an opportunity to appoint someone. We hope the president appoints a solid constitutionalist to the bench. That could happen. We've been disappointed by justices in the past, though.
Yeah. So. And Dudley, this comes at a time, too, where it wasn't too long ago during the Democratic primary where some Democratic candidates were quite literally talking about banning, for example, assault rifles, as they put it, although the definition of that term is very vague. So a lot of conservatives were worried about what that exactly meant. And I mean, over the past couple of weeks, too, whether it's the events that have happened in Kenosha, for example, with Kyle Rittenhouse, a lot of people are wondering, are the Second Amendment rights really in jeopardy? Are the ability to self-defend one another really in jeopardy right now? So I want to ask you, taking a step back from this individual situation, is the Second Amendment right now in jeopardy?
The Second Amendment has been in jeopardy through the Obama administration, of course, and even in the Trump administration, where he has banned bump stocks and endorsed red flag gun confiscation. So it doesn't really matter who's in power. Honestly, we've had very little, let's call it, activism on the right. Somehow we think the left is going to allow that, is the only group that's allowed to do that. What we think right now is the perfect time for Americans to stand back and say, are you really ready to remove the rights of citizens to own firearms? While there's lawlessness in the streets, while law enforcement is either unwilling or sometimes unable or restricted from responding to calls for help. And in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, a perfect example, when self-defense is actually used, he's being brought up on charges. And so we think Americans have to evaluate that right now. Now, on a personal level, even Democrats right now are ignoring their calls for gun control and are going out and buying guns. All of our statistics show that everybody from every sector, and increasingly from the left, they are buying firearms right now.
No, and you know, as you were saying that, I thought about the McCloskeys in St. Louis, another couple, for example, that all they did was brandish a firearm on their own private property, and now they're facing charges. It's not from the mob or the woke people on social media, if you will, but even prosecutors in St. Louis are pursuing charges against them. So I think that when some people say that, for example, a lot of the progressive type of mentality has gotten now into mainstream politics, we could look at that as an example. We could look at what's happened to Kyle Rittenhouse for an example as well. And this comes at a time where you hit the nail right on the head, where even Democrats are starting to buy weapons right now among the unrest in American streets because they see the threat that police may be defunded. They see the threat that is being posed to your private property, your right to defend yourself. Is there an avenue right now for some maybe common ground between many Republicans and many Democrats who are now saying, you know what, I may not be for President Trump necessarily, but I am for my right to defend myself and my family?
Well, they can say that all they want, and we don't see this presidential election as a plebiscite on whether you're for the Second Amendment or not. Sure. The fact is, both parties' nominees have very bad records on guns. But the simple fact is, right now, Americans are looking at situations like Kyle Rittenhouse and thinking, gosh, how much more blatant can it be? We have a video of him being chased and shot at by a mob, and a young man of 17 only discharged his firearm at into three people, all of whom were inches away from him and were attacking him. And in one case, one of them actually had a handgun.
Right.
So, a 17-year-old was able to do that, and then the state of Wisconsin goes out and tries him like an adult. Yet they don't think he should be able to possess the rights of self-defense. So which is it? We made the promise that every penny we raised for Kyle Rittenhouse would be spent directly for Kyle Rittenhouse, either with his attorneys or to help the family survive in this difficult time. And that's what we did. That's what our organization prides itself. We're not going to lie to you. Not going to tell you, blow smoke up your skirt about politicians. The simple fact is, Kyle Rittenhouse is in a difficult situation right now, and no one's filing charges against the guys who attacked him or shot at him. They're only going against him. And we think in this difficult time with lawless thugs running around the country and threatening normal citizens who are sitting at their restaurant unless they're told to chant whatever slogan the mob thinks is correct. You don't get to do that in America. You don't actually get to force people to think what you think. You can disagree with them, but you can't use violence or threats of violence to force them to think what they're thinking. And what you can do is defend yourself when you're attacked by the mob. And we hope Americans start thinking about that a little bit more.
No, I think that's very well said, because I also think it's worth noting that the majority decision is not always the right decision. I mean, times of dissent and times of differing opinions are often times where America's the greatest that it's ever been before. I mean, I think it's worth noting that even at the foundation, at the very beginning of America, at one point slavery was the accepted norm, but the dissenting voices that came in and spoke out against that and spoke for the people who didn't have a voice, who, by the way, also had their Second Amendment rights or the ability to obtain guns in order to protect themselves. That's how we are able to grow, with dissenting ideas, outside views, things of that nature. So I appreciate what you're doing. Dudley Brown, thank you very much for joining us tonight.